Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, this afternoon. Really excited to get the chance to moderate this panel with some of the absolute best in the business from some of our customers, as well as Google, to really talk about the different stages of growth and the key points that we want to be talking about and considering as ISVs are really establishing and scaling their go-to-market with the clouds and their marketplace revenue. So I'm Dave Stryker. I lead our cloud go-to-market sales team here at Tackle. So our group really kind of looks after the co-sell relationships that we have with the cloud providers. And again, really excited to really kind of bring forth some of the best in the business. And Michelle, I'll let you lead off with some intros. And if you don't mind sharing kind of your role, company, obviously, as well as a little bit of the background that has led you to this point.
Sure. Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. Michelle Majeski, Director of Cloud Alliances at ZoomInfo. After nearly 10 years of sales experience and working as a direct seller, I leveraged that experience to then parlay it into a go-to-market strategy, really to build out partnerships across several ISVs, whether they're startups or publicly traded companies, to build out their cloud programs across AWS, GCP, Snowflake, and Databricks. On to you, Trish.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. I'm Trish Cagliostro, and I lead worldwide channels and alliances at Wiz. Probably the strangest channel leader you're ever going to meet. I have a pretty technical background. And, for me, I've never done the same job twice. And, when I came to Wiz, what I really wanted to do was to build an organization where we look more like a cloud company than a traditional security company. And I look at myself more as like a business engineer. And how do we tap into different channels like marketplaces, leverage our resellers, and ultimately be able to integrate our cloud marketplace in addition to our resellers to get the fastest, most impactful result for our business. Di, over to you if you want to introduce yourself.
Yep. Thanks, Trish. Hey, everyone. So I'm Di. I'm a managing director for Google Cloud Marketplace and ISV go-to-market initiatives. My team's primary charter is really to help grow the partner business through Marketplace. And so I have teams that are responsible for business development, category management, partner engineering and onboarding, partner and platform strategy, and various go-to-market initiatives, including our co-sell program in field engagement. I've been at Google for about 8.5 years. Before taking this role, I spent several years in the product group, an area of the business called the application modernization platform, where I was helping to scale our Kubernetes serverless developer platforms, as well as bootstrapping our multi-cloud initiatives with Anthos. So excited to be on the panel with you, Dave, Trish, and Michelle.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for sharing. As we kind of get into the questions, we're going to really kind of phase this out in terms of stages of growth and some of the things that ISV should be considering at each of those stages. And let's start out with that exploration phase, really kind of mapping out where to start with your go-to-market strategy through the clouds and where to start with considering driving marketplace revenue. And Trish, I'll lead off with you here. I know you and I got the opportunity to work together in the early days at Wiz. And you as an alliance leader are so passionate that this is something that will work for your company, and you're kind of mapping out all those different areas of opportunity. One of the biggest ways to accelerate that path is to get fellow executives and other leaders from outside of alliances and partnerships on board. What are some key components that you believe ISVs should be considering as they're kind of gaining a stable of supporters outside of partnerships and kind of expanding that to the leaders, their other leaders across the org?
Sure. So, for me, and fun fact, David was our first account executive, and he was awesome, and really helped us so much because, I think this is really interesting. So mind you, I came from Amazon before coming to Wiz, and full transparency, I had a different strategy coming to Wiz than I did after meeting with Tackle. I didn't know that the marketplace is retired, committed spend, and I worked there, right? So, I think that a really important thing is to understand what is your business solving for. So for us, we were in our first year of operation. Nobody had a Wiz line item in their budget, right? So we needed access to funding. Oh, by the way, I find, when you get into these really large, we cover over 30% of the Fortune 500 now. We are considered our customers of ours, right? they tend to have really long procurement processes. And so velocity was another really big important thing for us. When you talk about building alignment within our leaders, it's really helping them understand what is the value to customers? Why do their customers care about this? How is it going to help their business? And then setting really clear guidance on like what does success look like. I think every partner leader has probably gotten the question before, like, when is AWS going to bring me more business? Helping them understand that that doesn't just happen overnight, right? And what is the path to actually get there? And then, I think in the last thing I'll say, I think it's really easy. In the partner world, there's always a challenge where there's a lot of art and science in what we do. And some stuff is really easy to measure, some stuff is really hard. It's not just defining what success looks like, but making sure that you have measurable targets on how you're impacting the business and then what you need from the business to ultimately be successful. All of those were so critical to making sure our marketplace program was success. And then being able to report that back to the business and actually show what the impact was really helped us garner success support, not just at the leader level, but even within the field level as well.
Awesome. That's some awesome feedback. Michelle, would you have anything to add there in terms of kind of gaining more support broadly beyond just the four walls of your particular org with the other leaders within the team?
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm thinking about extended leadership, I'm thinking particularly about financial executives and sales leadership, senior sales leadership. The settings of expectations around cloud listing fees and how this will translate into new pipeline and larger deal size and increased sales velocity is really key. When speaking to financial leaders that are looking at, and scrutinizing cloud listing fees and how that's impacting their revenue. Also, a purchase reconciliation and timing of payments, potentially requesting access to programs such as daily disbursements from AWS or other programs at these partners that you can leverage and help your financial executives feel more comfortable with how this translates into that go-to-market strategy and overall revenue generation. In terms of sales leadership, this is a new muscle for these leaders that they're helping their teams understand and also work into their customer conversations. So when I think about this as a new strategic procurement option for our sales leaders to offer for customers, enablement and buy-in from top down is really critical. Helping these sales leaders and ultimately the ICs understand the value of how to work this organically into their conversations, inform customer talk tracks, as well as focusing on leveraging the cloud marketplaces to alleviate churn, especially based on where we're at in the macroeconomic environment today. This is a great way to align with cloud budgets at these customers and use this as a strategic procurement option, potentially to reduce churn as well.
Awesome. No, that's great feedback. There's something that was very obvious about your feedback there, and you mentioned sales leaders and reducing churn, and it sounds like really aligning to revenue oriented type goals. And Trish mentioned also like the measurables and the metrics of what success and what great looks like. That's not something for later stages of growth. Those need to be talked about right in the beginning of the process. So that's awesome feedback. Di, to pivot to you a little bit here. Alliance leaders really are kind of fighting a two-front war, if you will. Like their internal groups are trying to gather momentum for marketplace and to going to market with the clouds. They also have to work the relationships with the cloud providers themselves. So what are some things that you would look at sitting from your position at Google of some maybe things that ISVs should be absolutely doing in their day-to-day workings with the cloud providers as they look to launch a go-to-market with the cloud?
Yep. No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think the foundation is about differentiation and the strong joint value proposition with the partner products and how that aligns with Google Cloud. How does the mix between the two and how does that ultimately benefits the end customer, right? Our sellers are very incented to work with ISV partners. I mean, there's very compelling reasons to engage with them on deals because ISV partners are critical to customer workloads. They can accelerate, migrations, digital transformation efforts, and so forth. So I think it's really about sort of establishing that sort of core value proposition, and then really just making sure, as Trish and Michelle mentioned, just really equipping their sales team that right messaging and how to talk about co-sell and the benefits of working with Google Cloud, for example. And then similarly, just educating our Google field sales to understand what the product positioning and the personas. So I think that's one piece. And then the other thing I would highlight is, when you work with the cloud provider, they're all structured in different ways. So just making sure you understand the roles and the people who you'll most likely interact with, particularly with the folks in the region. I mean, certainly there's the customer account team, and on an opportunity, they'll provide the advocacy and routing to the right people necessary for Google. But beyond that, there's an ISV organization. We have specialists, we have partner advisors, we have regional co-sell acceleration teams, we have partner engineering teams. So just really working closely with this team and understanding their roles will help you navigate and advance your opportunities with more efficiency. So, I think I take it one step further. It's just understand how teams are structured. Now, typically, within our regions, we have ISV sales specialists who are typically grouped by solution areas, like different teams for like data and analytics and infrastructure security verticals and so on. And then the regional co-sell acceleration team is really just focused on facilitating that seller to seller connection, which is so critical for co-sell. So I think those are the two foundational pieces I would advise, just making sure you have that really strong, better together, strong value prop that you can communicate, and then having the connections with that cloud provider.
Yeah, that's great. A little bit of foreshadowing with some of the upcoming questions around that better together story that we know is so critical. Michelle, this will kind of wrap up the first part here around the evaluation stage and just getting launched into marketplace, and launching your cloud go to market. Like really all of us are being asked to do more with less these days, like where you're investing dollars, where you're investing resources, um, in areas to grow pipeline and ways to accelerate deals. What are some considerations on why investing in a cloud go to market and selling your software digitally through marketplaces, how does that stack up against some other areas that ISVs could be looking at, and maybe what do you find most useful about that process?
Yeah, so what I'm finding is that having cloud alliance managers are key. These are dedicated partner resources that are experts in the co-selling aspect that allow to work with the cloud provider to activate and unlock marketplace opportunities. By doing that and having this dedicated resource, you are then able to have this pipeline that you're working for your current opportunities that then leads itself to additional growth of that pipeline, through co-selling and working across these cloud partners. So when thinking about how to take one dedicated resource, make them an expert in not only co-selling, but owning the marketplace aspect, from a pre-sale and a post-sale execution. You can leverage that resource and then build out longer term plans to add additional resources, but under, given current environments and constraints that you may have, by empowering and molding a dedicated cloud alliance manager to become an expert in the partner that they manage. You make this resource really valuable that can work cross-functionally to achieve a lot, with limited resources at hand. I'm also thinking about how you take that cloud alliance manager and have a champion, have them identify a champion in, say, finance and also potentially business applications, so that you can work with the AR teams and also the Salesforce closure to make this a seamless process from execution of these private offers all the way through the reconciliation and collection aspect of it. Also engaging in the cloud partner programs with metrics that are aligned to the success annually, and also tapping into promotional programs that incentivize customers to transact via the marketplace. I've had success in working with AWS and using their MPOP program that allows us to kind of use that incentive to drive customers to use marketplace, maybe even for the first time, and help them understand the value of consolidated billing and simplified procurement. And then allowing those teams from a co-sell perspective to be more strategic in the accounts and ultimately growing that joint pipeline together.
Awesome. No, that's awesome feedback. And I know Trish, you guys over at Wiz have a cloud specialized team as well. That obviously didn't happen on day one. How important are the early successes and the early momentum? Kind of looping back to your early comments around like the metrics and kind of what success looks like to building towards a specialized team like that to really kind of nurture that co-sell in the field and leveraging cloud provider programs and things like that.
Sure. So, one is, of course, the metrics, right? So it was, we made the decision this year to become 100% channel company, um, because we were already doing more than three-quarters of our business through the channel. So it made sense, right? Um, when you look at the breakdown and you look at our data and you look at cloud marketplace deals, they're faster. We're also seeing pipeline coming from cloud providers. That's the number one question I get. The other thing I'd say, so I think there's a few different angles of this, right? So, first, you have, when you think about like what, and this is super important, like you have to understand when you're building your team, you have to be very clear about like what is that team going to actually do. How are we going to work with the field sellers? How are we going to build campaigns? So like step one is like build a plan, right? We're going to do these things with this partner. I think the next thing becomes like making sure that plan is focused. So something that we definitely struggled with early on, and probably still a little bit to this day. Like when you're a security company, with the cloud providers, they're aligned like largely vertical based, right? And so they're coming to you and saying, like, great, like, how do you help financial services? How do you help healthcare? I'm like, well, we're a security company. We kind of do the same thing for all of them. Insert compliance framework here. Not the right answer. No matter, and I think the next thing becomes like making sure your plan is focused on a particular region or a particular vertical, but essentially being able to say, like, this is where we're focusing, and then building success there. Then taking that plan and then looking to replicate it across other parts of the cloud provider becomes the next element, right? But then the biggest thing, and that comes at the end, is that like you have to have buy-in from the cloud provider too, right? Where if they don't agree with my plan or they're not supportive of it or they don't think it can be successful, then I'm not going to be successful. So like one of the things the cloud providers have been amazing with us on is really partnering on, what does success look like for both of us and really building a plan with us that we're both kind of mutually accountable to each other on what we're going to do. So just to kind of summarize, like I do have actually have a couple of specialized cloud teams. And again, like we didn't have those from day one, but the reason we were able to add them and the reason why it made sense to add them was because we had a plan on what they were going to do, a specific focus area, and then alignment with the cloud providers on how we were going to hold each other mutually accountable to be successful.
Yeah, that's awesome feedback, and thank you for sharing that. So we're going to kind of move on to the next call it the middle phase of the maturation process here of cloud go to market and selling through marketplace. Call it the growth phase. You've established that you want to do this as an ISV. You want to more aggressively pursue these cloud provider partnerships, and you really you have your executive team leaning into those, and maybe you even are transactable and doing some deals. So now we're really looking at that growth stage where um, some magic needs to start to happen in order for this to scale quickly. And Di, I'd love some feedback from you from your perspective. Um, it's hard out there for a lot of ISVs battling for attention with cloud providers. In some cases, maybe they have a solution that could be, a dotted line competitor to a native service that Google provides. So, what should ISVs be really focused on when they're trying to battle for attention with the cloud provider as they start to build their business and make it repeatable and scalable?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for those on that journey, I think the number one thing is to show a track record of success. And I think ISVs can lean in to their own sales efforts. Maybe generate sales through marketplace. It can be with a part of the formal co-sell program, but generating that early success, you get the attention of the cloud providers, and you have the advantage of you're actually driving near-term revenue through marketplace, but you're just building that track record, so it will enable sort of that engagement down the road. And I think another area that I think would be helpful is to really get a little bit of focus, meaning that when you build momentum, focus on things like, across like technical differentiation, marketing, or sales alignment in places where you're most likely to win. So this could be, a sales segment, could be a geography, could be an industry vertical, some other dimension that just makes sense for both both the partner and the cloud provider, because you dig in and you understand what the use cases are, what the strongest story, and you apply the focus in both sides. And when you're able to show that success with win rates or certain time to value, I think that's really valuable. So I think if, by the flip side, if you try to, go with a very broad approach, I think that creates a lot of noise for the cloud providers, because I think the cloud providers want to see a little bit of a targeted approach to co-sell, as opposed to just sort of blasting as much as possible, right? So when you are sourcing opportunities, really look at things like, is there a clear use case? Is there, very clear customer benefit? Is it qualified? Is it an active opportunity? Do you have an active customer point of contact? If you're going to engage a frontline seller for Google, is there a clear ask? So I think just those are the things that I would advise. And then certainly, once you have, those wins, just really focus on, promoting those wins, and, word gets out. As you mentioned, we have like, hundreds and thousands of partners we work with. So sometimes it does feel like a battle, but I think sellers are always looking for ways to better support their customers, and good news travels very fast. So really create that sort of adoptable, better together strategy, securing those set of wins, and getting your core team to share it as broad as possible with Google.
Yeah, that's great feedback. I mean, it's daunting for most companies when you think of selling with and through someone like Google. But those are some great pointers on the ways to at least start and kind of make the community start smaller at first and then continue to grow and expand over time. Michelle, kind of going towards you here with that co-sell dynamic and that co-sell interaction. Di just kind of gave some great pointers on how to stand out and how to differentiate. Now you actually have to have the conversations in the street. Like we talk a lot here at Tackle about like the two angles of co-sell. You have the boardroom and then you have the street, and kind of having those repeatable co-sell conversations are critical. And I know that you found some success with kind of giving your team some really, really tight agendas and guidelines on how those calls should be going. And would love for you to share a little bit more with the group on that.
Sure. What I found most successful in elevating your partnership is understanding that these cloud sellers have hundreds of partners knocking at their door. And if you don't have a clear subject line and a suggested agenda that you're coming to them with as to why they should spend time with you, oftentimes you may be overlooked. So what I've had success in doing with my teams is, one, setting a prep call with our internal seller to help them understand how to co-sell and what are the expectations of the call, along with clearly outlining what are your asks of this cloud seller, what do you want to get out of this conversation, and how you can come prepared for it. So in that agenda, having the Cloud Alliance Manager, one, prep my internal seller to take the co-sell call. And then when we have the co-sell call, the Cloud Alliance Manager outlining the agenda to kick off and lead the call, and also introduce the partner. Many of these, cloud sellers have so many calls every day that they may not know, your company, if it's not a household name, or if you are a household name like ZoomInfo, we now have a broader depth and breadth of product and also customer value that we drive, that you may need to reintroduce who you are today because you're not the same company you were 18 months ago. So by highlighting who you are as a partner, and also what partner programs are you in, there's a variety of incentive programs that you really want to highlight at the beginning of this call to catch the attention of these sellers. Promote that you're on Marketplace and available on Marketplace, via private offer. These are really good things to help catch the attention of the cloud seller, the Google FSR or the AWS AE, and helping them understand, okay, this is, the what's in it for me right off the bat. And then before you jump into the opportunity details, asking and understanding where they have contacts, do a bit of contact mapping. Have your seller come prepared with, these are my contacts. This is my wish list of contacts that I would like to seek. Do you know any of these individuals? How can we work strategically? So by setting up an agenda and kind of flowing through that in your initial co-sell calls, sets you up really well so that the cloud provider sellers feel like they've spent, good time with you and have received some value of it. they also know what to listen for now in their customer conversations to think back and bring a deal back to you, or however it may translate into that co-selling.
No, that's great. Like really kind of making sure that they understand how to help you hunt, right, amongst their own customer base is a massive thing that's going to drive what I think that most CROs in the world right now are really, really into, which is how are we going to drive additional pipeline and how are we going to accelerate our deals? So that's awesome feedback. You mentioned something, Michelle, that's super interesting there around like the difference of the way the story is told today versus the way that it was 18 months ago, and maybe how it will be told 18 months from now. Trish, if you want to add some comments, just from your rapid growth, really selling across clouds, I'm sure the way that you communicate and talk with those folks today is very different than it was, a year and a half ago when we first started working together. So I'm interested in kind of the way that you look at that evolution of the go-to-market better together story and how fast that could really change.
Sure. So, and you hit the nail on the head. It has to change. I think, you've heard the word a couple times, like journey, that's talked about through here. And it reminds me a lot, like when I used to talk to customers when I was a security engineer, a lot of times what I would tell them is like, it's not a marathon, it's not a sprint, like there is no finish line. And it's the exact same thing with the cloud go to market. For us at Wiz, right? Like we're almost a new company every 6 months because of how quickly we're growing. And what works for us today wouldn't have worked 6 months ago, and vice versa. 18 months is like 25 years in Wiz time. So, but to kind of summarize, like where we started was, it was really about like velocity at first, right? So what we were doing was we would go to the market, the cloud sellers. We would essentially be in procurement with customers, and our ask was very specific, like, hey, we're not asking for an introduction, we're not asking for anything else, we're in procurement, advise us on how to get through procurement. um, this was also really important because like one of the things we've definitely learned over time is that we do a lot of marketplace transactions and with a lot of different customers. And so like sometimes you will need the account team for help for escalations at AWS or at GCP. So making sure that you kind of set that touch point initially, that's something that we continue to carry through to this day. The way the conversations in the beginning went, like I said, they were very tactical. And then over time, what happened is we also would ask for like what we really focused on, like what was the value to their customer, right? Not just like no one knew who we were, right? So we were like, here's, you don't know who we are. We didn't have the luxury of being a household brand, right? It was, here's how we can help your customer, and here's who we are. Like we're not like a made up company. We have like real VCs and real growth. Like we wanted to make sure that it was like more about like understanding that we were a brand that they could trust and their customers could rely on. Cut to 18 months later, for us, it's a different conversation now, right? Where there is a lot more awareness about Wiz and the brand and how we're helping customers. So it tends to be more of a conversation about how we're going to help the seller within their account, how we can help them grow into other clouds. We are a multi-cloud solution, so that's always helpful. So it's less about explaining who we are and why they should take this phone call, and more about how are we going to work collaboratively. Like one of the things that we're getting into now, which has been really exciting, is how are we going to co-sell together into an account, right? So, and this is kind of a newer front for us in the sense that traditionally we've looked more for velocity, and now we're trying to look to say, okay, like you have some great relationships, we have some great relationships, how are we going to work together to really drive this forward? And that's been really exciting to see that transition. And it's interesting because like our field sees it too, right? Like I can go and tell our field all day, like, hey, like the cloud providers really know us and care about us and want to drive business for us. But when I actually see it with the field, like that's really exciting too. My field sellers tell me that these things are happening, not just me telling them about it as well.
That's a fun place to be, right? When it's recognized amongst the field and it's not just you, standing on your soapbox and screaming for anybody that'll listen. To kind of close up this section on the growth stage, I do feel like there are so many tackle customers, tackle prospects, just software sellers out there in the world today that are really kind of firmly in this segment of maturity. Michelle and Trish, both of you guys, if you would be able to comment, like what was most surprising about this? Was it operational strain that you started to experience, process driven system challenges? Like what are some of the things that maybe you found particularly challenging about about this stage of growth for your respective companies?
I'll go with rose and thorn. So our challenge here um, is often the operational aspect. How do we, seamlessly close out these opportunities, suppress invoicing, make sure that we're aligned with when we're receiving revenue, and then, not having our collection teams reaching out to customers who have already paid via marketplace. There's a large orchestration here that's required across many different teams that touch the customer. And then you also have new employees that join those teams. So the constant evolution of enablement is really critical, and can sometimes be challenging in this space. What is really surprising and also motivating here is when you have a seller that had no idea what co-selling was previously, had no idea what a cloud marketplace was, and they closed their first deal and they had a great co-sell experience, the way that they bring that back to their teams is just like invigorating for all to hear. And then there's a natural competitiveness across these sellers that it spreads organically through the teams that they want to go have that experience, and they want to go, secure an upsell that was an increased deal size or whatever the success may be. It's amazing and really motivating to see that grow across the teams when you're in this phase where it's a very new, scary motion. Sellers don't want to mess up their sales cycle. That's probably one of the biggest challenges, is like, how is this going to slow my sales cycle? When in reality, this can actually, really increase sales velocity and grow the deal size.
Awesome. Trish, anything to add there?
So my answer on the operational side. No. To add a little more color there, I think one of the things we learned pretty quickly early on is I went to my operations leader and I was like, "We're going to launch in all 3 marketplaces in 90 days," and she said, "You're out of your mind." And then she did a podcast like 3 months ago about how it was such a good decision. So everybody becomes believers eventually with time and data, right? And it's why the data piece becomes so important. And I think one of the things that I definitely have an appreciation for as a channel leader is the willingness of the operations leader, to invest the time, to invest the resources, say, "Hey, I met you 3 months ago and this sounds like a crazy idea, but sure, let's do it." The other thing is like it very like and I think there's some things that are unique to us just because of how quickly our business is growing, but something I think is broadly applicable for everybody is it very quickly moves from an interest problem to a scale problem very, very quickly on the operations side, where like you're doing these things one off and then all of a sudden your business really starts to take off. And if you're not prepared for it, it becomes a really big issue. Like, I don't think there's a person on this call would be like, yeah, like entering pipeline into the cloud portals is like a super easy thing that doesn't take any time. There's challenges that gets into as you're building private offers, like, you guys are amazing with that, helping us scale across the 3 clouds. I think the other thing that we've done too that was really important was like designing job descriptions around the expectation that people are going to do these things. Because like originally, sometimes we get pushback from people like, "I'm not doing that." I'm like, "No, no, no, like you're totally going to do that. That's part of your job." And making sure that there's accountability. So like we've actually spent a lot of time. It's funny because I was talking to someone recently about this. Um, and they were asking how we measure success. And it's kind of moved from not just the output or the results of what we're seeing from the marketplaces, but also measuring the inputs as well. So making sure that like my team is submitting all the ACE referrals like they're supposed to across all the 3 cloud providers, making sure that they're accepting things in time. Like and when you build reporting and metrics and then create dashboards around that, I can give that to the leaders on my team that say, "Hey, like, here's what," because like you can't assume that people know how to do these things because it's such a relatively new motion that's starting to really scale now. So you can look at it and say like, "Hey, like you have 3 people on your team that have 3 AOs sitting in queues that they haven't accepted, like go call them, make sure they're accepting that," or they haven't launched opportunities and sent the emails. But so we've worked a lot to build reporting and dashboards around driving the right behaviors that we need out of our field. And honestly, it took us a little too long to do that. I wish we did it like 6 months ago. We just did it recently. But like things like that, like I think when you really start to scale your business, if you don't do that stuff early on, it comes back and it bites you really, really quickly. And it's hard to build it afterwards.
Yeah, retro data, not the most fun thing to be doing. But awesome feedback there. We have about 10 minutes left, so I want to kind of pivot to the final stage of maturity. We'll call it scale. and kind of reaching this point, to use Michelle's phrase, it's like a rose and thorn kind of a thing. Like it's great, like revenue is coming in, pipeline is going up. Um, Lots of moving pieces from a people and process and system perspective, all geared towards really making this a fundamental part of the way that you sell your product. um, it'll be really great to get your feedback from a cloud provider, obviously marketplace leader perspective. um, Google wants more buyers. They want more deals going through Marketplace. They like to look at things as a percentage of revenue that's going through Marketplace. Those are all things that I think it's fair to say cloud providers care about. When you're looking at the measurables and the metrics of an ISV operating at scale, what are some of the things that you look at? And like, if you want to call it like things that would stand out on a spreadsheet to you and say, well, like that company is really doing it the right way. What are you looking at?
Yeah, no, definitely. So you're right. I think the gross transaction value that is, or some variant of that metric is obviously the really the sort of the top metric we look at in terms of the productivity of the partner. But the other things we look at are obviously things like consumption, or to the extent that the partner has native cloud services integration and driving that sort of consumption and services consumed. There's a sort of geography and industry mix. So historically, our business has been very strong in North America. We're very focused on growing in key geographies in Europe, Asia Pacific, and Latin America. Strategic industry mix, similar, retail, media, healthcare, financial services. So if the ISV can help us accelerate adoption in those strategic industries. And then, sort of extended at the scale, you have a partner manager at a global level as well as in region. We do measure with the help of the deal registration, looking at things like win rate, deal cycle time, and deal sizes as well. And then, the other area I would highlight is there's a very strong focus on customer acquisition in greenfield accounts. So making sure that we have partners that help us win new deals and new logos. And then with the deal registration, I would also look at the mix between marketplace versus partner paper deals, where, marketplace for us, as I mentioned before, is increasingly becoming not just a route or a preferred route, but is coming the route to market for all third party solutions. So I really want to see that land in marketplace and see that shift mix as much as possible.
That's awesome, and kind of right in line with some of the things that Michelle and Trish have shared right along the way here. So thank you for providing that. Michelle, as we kind of pivot to you here, when you're operating at scale, you're into some next level type stuff with the cloud providers, right? We kind of talked about the establishment and the evolution of the Better Together story, setting the foundation with the cloud providers of really kind of having those repeatable interactions in the field. Programmatically, what should ISVs be looking at in their interactions with cloud providers at this particular stage? Maybe they're signing, collaboration agreements or some sort of a more robust contractual partnership with the cloud provider. What are some of the things that you would guide folks to look at this particular stage of growth?
Certainly, any opportunity that is presented to you in terms of strategic investment letters, strategic collaboration agreements, those are good signs that these cloud providers are seeing the trajectory that you're on, and they want to assist you there with additional resources, MDF funding, and additional programs to really evangelize your brand and grow that brand awareness within the market and their customer base. You can also think about what joint thought leadership activities and items can you do? Whether that's joint blogs, webinars, executive roundtable dinners, jointly with these cloud providers in terms of a specific segment or industry where you're having success, really helps to broaden the reach there and also elevate yourself not only within the cloud provider but also within the customer market. I'm thinking about also win wires and public case studies. It's really helpful to show the success that you've been having into the internal teams via win wires, and that can go out into the field sellers. And also from a public case study perspective, being able to highlight the joint, the customer value that you've driven with that cloud provider and have that referenceable case study really helps to elevate your brand awareness within that cloud provider and can be a reusable asset to also generate leads. So getting creative in how you're working with these partnerships and taking advantage of working strategically with your PDMs. These clouds have these dedicated partner development managers that are there to help guide you, and also, to brainstorm with them. We're here today. This is what we want to be at the end of the year or at the end of next fiscal year. How do we get there, and what unique opportunities or programs are available to me? I think what's really cool about working with hyperscalers is there's always these kind of like think tank type programs that just pop up. And if you're there evangelizing all the work that you're doing and dedication here, you may be able to join into some of those programs or get nominated for those programs when you didn't even know they existed.
That's awesome feedback. It really kind of aligns with a lot of what Di has kind of commented on a few times throughout our session of like you really need to be able to amplify those wins. Like it's a really big deal and obviously a big piece of your comments there. Not going to ask any more questions. Like I want to make sure like we have some of the best in the business here and put on your I don't know, like your wizard hat, look at your crystal ball. What are some of your, maybe choose one as we have just a few minutes left here, so maybe about a minute each. What is a big, bold prediction for the next 12 months as it pertains to cloud go-to-market and marketplace revenue? So whoever would like to lead off, if you have one that's top of mind, but it'd be interesting to kind of hear what you think could be coming down the pipeline.
Go ahead, Trish.
Me? Okay. So my prediction, I think one of the things that's been really cool for Wiz is that we're brand new, right? So we didn't have to figure out how to integrate cloud go to market. We got to build it from the ground up. My prediction is that every reseller will have a cloud sales business that's pretty robust and pretty meaningful in the next year.
That is a bold prediction. Has been growing very steadily for the last couple of years, but that's a really good one. Michelle or Di?
From my perspective, what I've been seeing is an increase in outreach from these cloud sellers that are coming to us and saying, my customer is looking to consolidate billing and simplify procurement on Marketplace. We hear you have a renewal coming up. Is there an opportunity for us to leverage Marketplace? How can we get more strategic in the account with you? I'm hearing that more and more across these cloud providers, and they're coming to us proactively without a deal being registered and letting us know that this is now a customer effort here that they are looking to support. So I think from a customer perspective, over the next year, you're going to see even wider adoption to take advantage of all of that simplified procurement, consolidated billing, and the incentives that they receive by burning down and through commitments, and taking place and advantage of Marketplace.
Super interesting. I vote for that one as in terms of like would love to see it more consolidation of spend on the buyer side being driven by the clouds. That's a really good one. Di, let's wrap up with you.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would highlight is I think more and more we're going to see more and more different partner business models participate in the value creation and delivery of third-party solutions and marketplace. So, we touched on channel partners, but think of like data providers and AI ML providers and, managed service providers and system integrators. So I think the co-sell opportunity will be sort of like a one-to-many where the customer is really at the center, but really collaborating across an ecosystem with the cloud providers.
Awesome. Those are three really good ones. So thank you guys for playing along with a little curveball at the end there. But really appreciate your insights and your feedback around the different stages of growth and considerations that ISV should be looking at. It's been awesome to spend some prep time with you and just kind of pick your brain a little bit here today in front of everybody. So appreciate your support of Tackle and the support of the event. Nicole, I'm not sure if there's any questions or if we're kind of probably right up against time here, but thank you again.